All right, starting a new chapter, chapter 20. Make a l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim.
Okay, so previously on, I feel like I'm doing a network TV series. Previously on Tanya. So the Alter Rebbe explained that how is doing the Torah very near, very easy. It's because every Jew has a hidden love. And that hidden love is part of your genetic makeup, your DNA as a Yid, as a Jew. And all you got to do is access it. And the truth of the matter is, every Jew wants to be connected to God. And how do you connect to God? Through mitzvahs. There is no other way. You can't invent your own connection. It doesn't work that way. It's like inventing your own phone number. It says, I can't choose your phone number. You want to connect to God, you got to call him on his phone number. That's the way, that's the way it is. So every Jew wants to connect to God. And every Jew wants to connect to God doing mitzvahs. So why don't we? Why don't we? Because sometimes we're idiots. Sometimes we act foolishly, and we think that I'll make my own way, I'll do my own thing, or God, I'll still be connected, and it doesn't really make a difference. God's not watching. Pick from your potpourri bowl of stupidity that people tell themselves. But last time we said, until it comes to self-sacrifice, there comes a point where a person cannot fool themselves anymore. And when it comes to conversion, a person will never say, I can still be connected to God, but I'll convert from Judaism. It's too far, because the connection to God is irrational. It's above. When you say irrational, it makes it sound bad. Irrational means it's beyond logic. Mm-hmm. Your connection to Hashem is beyond logic. So you can legitimize all you want, but the connection to Hashem is there. Therefore, when an act comes that serves to sever that connection, the supra-rational part of you kicks in and overcomes any logic. So now the Alter Rebbe is going to go. The Alter Rebbe continued to say, so that love of Hashem is the basis of doing all the dues, and included in that is the fear to be severed from Him, and we have the source of all the do nots. So now, the question is, how is that embedded? How is that embedded in the heart of every single Jew? So we need to have a little bit of a history lesson. When the Jewish people came out of Egypt in the year 244, right, on the 15th of Nisan, it took them 49 days. Well, it didn't take them 49 days to get to Mount Sinai. It took them 43 days to get to Sinai, because they got to Mount Sinai a few days before the giving of the Torah. So, plan A, I guess you want to call it that, was Hashem was going to speak to Moshe, and Moshe was going to speak to the Jewish people. Then the Jewish people said, "No, Moshe, we want to hear from God Himself," and God was very happy to hear that. They said, "Okay, if that's the case, then you have to prepare. You don't just hear God's voice. You have to experience prophecy." Actually, you can open up Maimonides. He talks about what a person has to do to prepare themselves for such an experience. So the Jewish people were experiencing prophecy, so they had to prepare themselves for 3 days. Now, prayer also, you have to stay away from impurity, stay away from women for 3 days. Go to the mikveh. So now what happened actually at the giving of the Torah? The Jewish people thought they prepared, and they did prepare because God spoke to them. But what happened was, there was such a explosion of godliness at the giving of the Torah that what happened. The Medrash tells us that when God spoke, their souls left. Because our souls really want to connect to God. Why don't they? Oh, sorry. I framed it poorly. Our souls really want to reconnect, go back to its source. I think we spoke about this. Everything wants to go back to its source. The soul wants to go back to its source. Why doesn't it? Because God forces it, or it doesn't feel its connection. in such an open, explicit way. But when God spoke, was such an explosion of godliness, the soul just left. And so God restored the souls of everybody. And then God spoke again. Commandment, or it's not really a commandment, utterance. We call it in English 10 commandments. It's really 10 utterances, 10 speeches. In Hebrew, it's called Aseret Dibrot. Diber is to speak. It's 10 speeches. First one is, I am God, your God, took you out of Egypt, number 1. Number 2 is, you should not have any other gods aside from me. You can't make any idols. You can't have them. You can't you can't bow down to them. You can't serve them. So the second speech, it has 4 commandments. So really we call it 10 commandments. They're actually 14 commandments, by the way. Like Shabbos is 2. Keep and guard. It's 2 separate ones. Let's make sure the air conditioning's on. So what happened, so the Jewish people, their souls left once, souls left twice, and God restored it twice. But then the Jewish people started to become afraid. What happens if God speaks now? And our souls leave, and God says, you know something? The heck with them. Leave them dead. They were afraid. So they went to Moshe and they said, maybe plan A was better. Maybe God speaks to you, because obviously you can handle it, and you speak directly to us. So Moshe didn't like the idea. God didn't like the idea either, because if God wanted to kill you, I could have done it a long time ago. If I wanted you to be dead, right? You'd be dead already. The whole idea was that the experience should be so embedded in the core, the being of every Jew, that it would be a lot harder to transgress God's commands. But ultimately, God says, listen to what they're saying. I'll speak to you. That's why, if you notice, if you look at the 10 Commandments, there's a linguistic difference between the first 2 speeches and the other 8. The first 2 is in second person. I am your God. I took you out of Egypt. You should not have any other gods. You should not serve them. It's all you. When you get to commandment number 3, which is taking God's name in vain, it says, you should not take God's name in vain. Keep God's Shabbos. Why? Why is it switched to the third person? Because now it's Moshe talking. So God spoke 2 commandments to the Jewish people, right? The first one, I am God, which is a positive. And the second one, don't have any other gods, that's a negative. So now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, based on that included in the first one is all the positive commandments, 248 positive. Included in the second one, where God spoke directly to the people. Otherwise, you could say, we didn't hear it from God, we heard it from a third party. Like Apple trusted marketplace, whatever it is, right? Third party app. Moshe, by the way, tried that. Moshe used that? Where the Jewish people served the golden calf. So Moshe says to God, you weren't very clear. You said you. Who's you? You could mean you. You could mean you. Not me, him. And God said don't have idols. Who's he? You should not have idols. Who's he talking to? Maybe he means only Moshe. He didn't say all you guys. He said you. So Moshe said, really, it's kind of your fault. And he said, yeah, and you gave the Jewish people a lot of gold. What are they going to do with all that gold? So, right.
Is that why he didn't want him into Israel?
No.
Okay.
Moshe was the ultimate defender of Moshe took the Jewish people's side even over God, even over the Torah. That's what made Moshe the greatest leader of all time. There was the Jewish people, and he's the shepherd, and the shepherd always puts his people first. Yeah, that's what makes Moshe the greatest. That's why, by the way, at the end of the Torah, this is off the subject, but since you brought it up, it says, for all the things that Moshe did, and he took us out of Egypt and split the sea, and the signs and what he did in front of all the people. So the rabbis ask, what exactly is it referring to when it says, and what he did in front of all the Jewish people, in the eyes of all the people? So the Gemara says, the fact that he smashed the tablets. and Hashem says, "Thank you for smashing it." Because Moshe said, what was greater? Well, the greatest thing Moshe did was smashing the tablets, because he put the Jewish people first. That's what makes Moshe the greatest. That's why he's that's why he's Moshe. I mean, that's sad. Anyway, so in those personal commandments, we have included the do's and the do nots. So, because the Alter Rebbe now is faced with a difficulty, because how often are we faced with convert or die? Maybe in the Middle Ages, that was a common problem, but these days it's not a problem. And how are we supposed to channel that idea that I don't want to sever that connection with God into everyday action? So, it's so being so. What Alter Rebbe is going to do now is going to teach us how embedded in those two first commandments we can use that logic that I never want to break the connection with God into doing every mitzvah and not doing any averis. All we got to do is think. Okay, ready? Any questions? Good? Okay. Page 272 in the old print, page 279, or 280, 280 in the new print. V'hinei, now, Mudah Zois, it's very well known. L'chol, for everybody, the mitzvahs has avodah zarah, because the mitzvah and the warning of serving idols, of serving a foreign service, which are shnei dibrei harishenim, which are the first two commandments that God gave on Sinai, which is Anochi, I am God, and you shall not have any other gods. They include all the Torah. So it's interesting. I forgot which rabbi did it. So what he did was we know we have the 613, right, commandments. What he did was he branched all the 613 into the 10. How all, like, it doesn't say anything about keeping Passover in the 10 Commandments, right? So how do you know it's connected? God didn't tell it. God spoke the 10 Commandments at Sinai. How do you know we have to keep Passover? We didn't hear from God, but he shows how now you can break it down. Like the chart of elements, you can break it down further into just the two. So you can't say, the part of the Torah doesn't include it, doesn't apply to me. We're there. Oh, by the way, you might ask, what does it mean we're all there? So just a side note to answer that question. The Kabbalah says that there's 600,000 Jews, give or take. Right? There were 603,000, I think, and change. That stood up on Sinai were general souls. General souls mean all the souls that came after are a part of those souls, or branches off of those souls. So that's why when it says we were all stood at Mount Sinai, maybe in your consciousness you don't obviously remember it, but we're all there. We're all fortified with that experience. Okay. Kidibor, Anoichi, the commandment I am God, which is the positive one, Koilo Kol Mitzvah Saseh, Kol Ramach Mitzvah Saseh, includes all 248, thou shalt. V'lo Yelacha, and the second commandment, thou shalt not have. Koilo includes Kol Shasam Mitzvah Saseh, all 365 do nots. V'lchein, therefore, that is why Shamanu, we heard, that's why all we had to hear from God was I am and you shall not have. Kamar Zal, like the rabbis say in Gemara Makkas, it says because this includes the entire Torah. So we actually didn't have to hear anything else. So just like love motivates you to do a mitzvah, and fear, what is fear? Fear, we're not talking about fear of punishment. We're talking about fear of what the relationship will be. Motivates you to not to violate. So that is the basis. But now the question is, the obvious question is, I understand idolatry is a very bad sin. Think of it like this. There's a very good book back there somewhere. Yeah, right there, actually. Where it talks about all the 10 Commandments and how they cross references, the 5 and the 5. So, I am God. and do not murder are in the same level, right? 1 and 6. Why? Because every person is created in the image of God. So when a person commits murder, it's really, so to speak, not believing in God. Number 2, you should not have any idols. You know what correlates to number 2? What's number 7? Number 7 is you don't commit adultery. Because
Idolatry?
Idolatry is the equivalent of adultery. Why? Because when a person serves idols, he's cheating on God. Right?
Adultery is
Cheating on your spouse.
your spouse.
Right?
Significant other to be politically.
We're not politically correct. Spouse. Thank you.
Significant other? No.
Spouse.
Spouse.
Meaning because there's only, with you and God, you only have one God.
To Judaism.
You only have one God. Right? There isn't any other gods. God's not into an open relationship, right? Like we read in last week's parsha, he's a jealous God. He wants you all to himself. Right? So when a person goes and takes himself another God, he's cheating on God. Same thing when a person is in a marriage. It's only you and the other person. That's it. So imagine.
But God can. I mean, idolatry. You mean you can idolize? I don't know, an athlete or something.
But yeah. So idolatry presents itself in many different levels.
Yeah.
So also, the problem is people can idolize themselves. Actually, the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about in Tanya. When we sin, what are we doing? When we sin, we're actually idolizing ourselves. Because God said no. And you're saying, God, I know you said, but you have your opinion, and I have my opinion. So you're equating yourself with God. That's idolatry. Because He's Hashem Echad. He's the only boss. But yeah, that's yeah.
Yes, he's the only boss, which means nobody's better than you.
No, but not we spoke about in another class. Not only no one's better, in a different class we spoke about there is no other.
Yeah.
So, but we're going to talk about this in a later time. The belief in God. It's actually the second part of Tanya. So imagine you forget to buy your wife flowers for Shabbos.
That up again?
You buy your flowers for Shabbos.
I don't buy my wife flowers. She has allergies.
All right.
She
So
doesn't
whatever
want
it is,
flowers.
right?
Who cares? So buy her candy.
So imagine candy, right? And you say,
With the flowers all.
and you say, well, I did not buy flowers. I might as well go cheat on your wife. so because you're thinking, how is that connected? But what the Alter Rebbe is doing is sort of the reverse. Alter Rebbe is saying, because I won't serve idols, that's going to motivate me to do all the mitzvahs. What are you talking about? I won't serve idols. That means I won't do anything else. Idols is like a massive thing. Obviously, I'm not going to serve idols. But okay, if I want to have, a little hamburger, a little piece of, whatever it is, or I want to do something, I still believe in God. Imagine you go over to a guy who's not wearing a kippah, right, and said, "So since when are you not Jewish?" "I'm not Jewish. Why are we saying I'm not Jewish? You're not wearing a yarmulke. What are you talking about? How dare you?" Right? Or a guy's doing some other mitzvah. A guy didn't. You go to the guy, says, "You put on tefillin every day this week?" He says, "No, whatever. I forgot." "Okay, you don't count for a minyan. Why? You're not Jewish." Right? The correlation doesn't make any sense. But that's kind of what the Alter Rebbe is saying over here. He's saying here that the motivation of believing in one God is the motivation to do every mitzvah, and the vera of serving idols is the motivation to stay away from every avera. But it's clearly not the same. You're not buying your wife flowers or candy, and cheating on your wife is not exactly the same. All right? It's right. Doesn't just because you don't put on tefillin doesn't mean you became a Baptist. So the Alter Rebbe has to answer now of this question: how are these two, which is obviously the bedrock of Jewish faith, how are these two the motivation for every single aver and every single mitzvah? Understand the question? Good question. Okay. So So Alter Rebbe is explaining this.
Wait, the two being idolatry and adultery?
No, the two being believe in one God and don't have any idols. The positive and the negative.
Okay.
So the Mechilta gives an example. Mechilta is a book of Midrash. It says, before you have a commandment, you have to have a commander. Right? If you don't accept the authority of the commander, then the commandments are not. So he gives the example. So he says, first you got to believe in the Eibishter. You got to believe in the one God, and then we could talk about the mitzvahs. Because if you don't believe in the absolute in power of the commander, and automatically you can't have anyone, then the mitzvahs are not. So that's the basis of every single mitzvah. Why are you putting on tefillin? Because God, the commander, says so. Right? Why aren't you eating this? Because He said not to. That's the foundation. So now the Alter is going to explain the Eibishter is the one existing being, right? And He's saying, do A, and you don't do it. God forbid. What are you really saying? What are you in fact saying? If you take away all what your person's really saying is that he's not really the commander, because if he was, you'd listen. So it goes back to the core belief. Because if you believe in God properly, then you would do the mitzvah. So either you're not thinking straight, or you got a problem with belief in God. You got one of those two problems. Does that make sense? The same thing is, God said don't do something. So why is the person doing it? Well, obviously because you have a difference of opinion. God gave you a script. Don't smoke, whatever it is. You say, wait, he's just one doctor. What do you mean? Did you go to
second opinion?
Did you go to what was it, George Allen? I think, who smoked a cigar until like 98 or something.
Yeah.
George
Burns.
George Burns. No, who Gracie Allen.
Gracie Allen. His wife.
Right. Sorry. She wore the pants in the family. Right. So that's what the Alter is gonna explain here. So, because when you think of every mitzvah as a chance to, as a way to the boss said, I do. And every avera is a way that he's the only authority here, and therefore I have to listen to him. So any deviance from that practice goes against the belief in the boss, or in the belief he's the only boss. That's how we say Shema, by the way. Number one, he's the boss. Shema Yisrael, right? Hashem Elokeinu. He's the boss. And just in case you thought maybe he's the chief of bosses, or he delegates, he has a cabinet, or someone else has an opinion. No, Hashem Echad. He's the only. The word Echad is Aleph Ches Daled. Aleph stands for Alufei Shalolam. He's the general, the master of the world. Ches isn't Kabbalah says there's the 7 heavens and 1 earth. What that means, 7 heavens, when I go there, and Daled, the 4 sides. He's the one guy everywhere. That's it. So that's when you think about it that way, that's the motivation to do every mitzvah and to stay away from every aver. Okay, let's explain this in Alter Rebbe's words. Olavar, hey Dave, to explain this well, Inyan Zed, this concept Tzarech Lahaski, we have to remember Tchila, B'Ktsara, first in short, Inyan Umuhus Achdus Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The concept of God's unity. Shenikra Yachad V'Yuchad. That God's called one and unique. Number one, first idea is that He's one. He's the only one. And number two, He's not a composite being. Everything we in the world is made of parts. Right? In science, with the elements is back this up. Everything is made up of parts, atoms and neutrons, all that. God is not made up of anything. He's made up of God. He's one. We don't understand the concept of true oneness. And He is the only, and He's the only one. And we continue with Chom Aminim, and all believe. This, by the way, is a quote from the High Holiday Prayers. The Chom Aminim, and everyone believes that Shehul Avadayu, that He's the only one. He is the same guy as before the world was created. And this is very important because when I work, I get tired. You work and you get tired. So you would think God created this world and He created a pretty fantastic world. Maybe He's tired. No, but God hasn't changed. The creation of the world hasn't affected Him. It's like breathing. Right? Did you ever get tired from breathing? No. Right? Right, exactly. Like it says, like we say in the morning prayer, you are the same guy before the world was created, and you are the same once the world was created. So nothing. Nothing was created. Nothing was has changed. What does that mean? Pirush means who mamish bli shum shinai. He is the same entity without any change. Like Hashem tells Malachi, Ani Hashem lo shinisi, I am God. I have not changed. So although God created this whole world and all the myriads of creations and creatures and all these different things, and He did such a wonderful job, nothing has changed. Where is the change? Where do we experience diversity and dichotomy and difference and separation? Here. So I once heard a line when I was learning Tanya, and it made a big impact. And we always have to differentiate. Many of the questions that we have come from our mistake, not to differentiate between our experience and God's experience. Our experience is a bottom up experience. We're looking at Him, and we look at Him based on our experience. God's experience is up down. So what he experiences and what we experience is not the same. Samson would fall Hirsch, and this is not exactly on the top and on the subject. Has a great line. You ever heard of Samson Raphael Hirsch? He's a big Ashkenazic rabbi. He's actually he's from Germany. He was the first one after the Reform movement in the late 1700s, and they were ripping off the Bible, and so he translated the Torah into German. He was a God-fearing person. He single-handedly fought Reform Jewry in Germany. He was a great man, and he convinced Jews to go to school with a yarmulke. I mean, it appeared he was a very, very, very great man. He was a Litvak. So even though I'm a chassid, but you got to give credit where credit's due. And he said about he wrote a lot about Christianity. He says they created God in their image, in man's image. Judaism believes man is created in God's image. So what do we usually do? So we from our experience of how we go through life, separation and change and all these things, we think, hey, that happens to him. He's just a bigger guy, from planet Krypton, but whatever it is. But that's not the case. Hashem has not changed at all. Continuing inside, Ki oilam hazeh, because this world, page 282, right? Yeah, 275 in the old print. Because this world, and similarly, all the supernal world. You learn in Kabbalah. If you read up on it in the world of Atzilus and Bria, all those upper worlds that we make a big deal. It's interesting that in the high holiday prayers, we speak a lot about how all the angels are terrified and everything else. Why? Because we think that we're terrified because we're lowly human beings. But the angels, they're kind of close, and they're closest. They're more, on friendly terms. No, they're just as distant and terrified as God, but they're more because they understand more. So all the supernal worlds, which we make a big deal, has not changed. We spoke about this in the Parsha class last week. It has not changed God's unity. God is just as one now as He was before. Now you can say, how is that possible? If we're here, you could watch last week's Parsha video. We said that we exist sort of inside God. There is only still one, and He's the only true existence. We change. He doesn't change. True existence means you don't change. That's what true means. True means you're the same, beginning, middle, and end. Shekamoisha hayahu levadahu yachad miyuchad chaydim hebadam. Just as God was alone, single and unique before the creation, Kenhu levadahu yachad miyuchad achad shebarab. Same thing is he's one unique and after the creation. Mishum the kula kamin kolay chashiv. Because everything that you think is important is nothing. Look at the story in the news. Off the coast of Italy. Big rich guys in a beautiful boat. And these guys were important guys. Right? One guy was a big fine schmecker of a lawyer. Another guy was a CEO of this company and a CFO of that company. Yeah, and you think these guys are important. One wind comes and it knocks over. Right?
Yeah, a lot of people can't understand why it happened to that boat, but all the other boats that were like in the harbor and everything, they were rocking all over the place, but they didn't sink.
I think because of the mast. That's why the mast is the tallest mast in the world.
Yes.
Tallest mast in the world. I just heard about it because it was such a tall mast. The thing is, so many times we put importance on things. They're not important. The only thing that truly exists, the only thing that's truly important is Him. And everything else is zero. Absolute zero. So He's the only entity and everything else is, there's nothing aside from Him. Now, it's kind of hard for us to live that way because we're thinking, what do you mean everything's nothing? What do you mean I exist? Right? And what do you mean? What do you mean I don't exist? You exist, and from your point of view, you exist. From His point of view, nothing.
We
Nothing.
exist within Him.
Right. So let's say, for example, right, you go to a millionaire gives a kid, right, a billionaire, trillionaire, Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, whatever it is. Who's winning for the richest guy? Is it Musk? Is it Bezos? It's usually like a.
Goes back and forth.
It's kind of like the Olympic medals, up and down.
It's really Putin, but.
It's really who?
It's really Putin.
Putin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
But he hides his money, so you don't know.
Right, exactly. Talking about yachts, exactly. Anyway, so listen, don't say anything. You might fall out of a window. You can live in a one-story house. So let's say, for example, Elon Musk, right, goes over to an 8-year-old, right? He says, for Hanukkah guilt, I'm giving you $100. Like, oh my God, $100! He's going crazy. What's $100 to Elon Musk? It's nothing.
It's a drop in the bucket.
It's nothing. And it's not even a good example because obviously $100 does mean something because if you accumulate $100 a bunch of times, you get to it's not a good example because we don't understand what value is. So from the kid's point of view, it's amazing. Now but from his point of view, it's meaningless. So similarly, not the same, but so everything. So everything is it's a kolok mamash chashivi chayin habs mamash. Everything is not before. So now how can it be so? It says what about everything that exists? So the Rebbe is going to explain like this. Why is everything zero? We'll do a little bit more. Why is everything zero? Because everything has to be brought into existence at every moment. So therefore, do you really exist? No. Meaning, if I have to constantly, I've given an example of, right? Like, I think we spoke about this with someone else. Its natural state is to go down. So let's say I want to show that this could be in the air. I have to constantly imbuing it with energy so that it stays in the air. So imagine you don't see me doing this. You say, "Oh wow," or the camera cuts out and all you see is the AirPods hanging in the air. You're like, "Oh my gosh, the AirPods are hanging in the air all by itself." So, but anyone with has any brains will say no. The natural state is that it falls down. Well, the only thing is, there's a string or there's something giving it energy. So if I'm holding it in the air, would anyone sensible to say that the natural state of the AirPods is to be in the air? Obviously not. The natural state is to go on the ground. So the fact that it's in the air, is it really in the air? It's only in the air because of. So if you're something because of, then you're not. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the only reason why the world exists is because of Hashem. Every moment has to keep renewing the creation, because the world doesn't exist by default. By default, it doesn't exist. The only thing that exists by default is God, right? And He created the world and continues to create. So if I have to constantly, so imagine I give you cash to go spend every single day. Don't get any ideas, they ain't happening. Right?
I'm saying, wait,
Right?
when is a rabbi giving me cash?
Right? It's a far-fetched example. And I go out, and you go out and say, I'm independent, look at how much money I have. But then you have to come back and get money. So are you independent? It's a stupidity. Someone gave the example. I'll give this example before. That sometimes you see a person walking a dog. Who's walking in the front? The dog. So
Not necessarily.
Usually a dog walks in front. Many times.
Not if he's a very well-trained dog. He walks by your side.
Okay. So
For this example, the dog's walking.
We'll
Get out.
deal with an untrained dog.
So a person can think, hey, look, who's leading who?
Yeah.
The dog's leading the master. But obviously, it's not. It's not that way. So it's what Al Rebbe is going to say over here. It's because the world has to be constantly brought into existence at all times. So the world doesn't really exist. It only exists because God says so. So the only true existence is Him, and everything else could be. It is here today, but it's not here tomorrow. Look at the guys who were on the boat. Very rich, very powerful. Few minutes, they're gone. This comes to show you the only true existence. That's why doing a mitzvah has such incredible value. Because once you do a mitzvah, nothing can take that away. You acted godly, and godly is eternal. That's why doing a mitzvah is so special. Because you're acting in a way that transcends time and space. Yeah, the act happened in time and space, but the effect of it is afterwards. After I was going to say, we'll do these two lines and then we'll call it a night until the 6th of Shvat. Because the creation of all the worlds. This is on 276. The creation of all the worlds, of upper and lower, happen from something into nothing. And its life and sustenance and existence that sustain them. They shouldn't go back to their natural state. Everything wants to go back to its natural state. That's the way it is. Everything wants to go back to its natural state. The natural state of the world is not. So Hashem has to, so to speak, exude energy, like blowing, right? We gave the example last week of blowing. If I wanted to make waves in the cup. So I stop blowing, it goes back to its natural state. So God has to constantly speak, let there be world, let there be light, let there be. Otherwise the world would revert to its natural state, which is not. So Hashem is constantly creating the world. So the only reason why it doesn't is because Hashem is the breath of his Hashem says something, it brings it into being. So, and then Alter was going to now, at that in next class, Alter was going to start a conversation, or continue the conversation, but think about how insignificant is when you say, have you ever said the words "Let there be light" in your life?
Of course.
Do you remember when? Probably not. Are you affected now because 15, 20, 40 years ago you said "Let there be light"? No, because what is one sentence? compared to your ability to speak, compared to your ability to think, which is coming from your power, your energy source, which is your soul. It's zero. So to us, creation of the world is a big deal. Like for example, you're a teacher. Sometimes a teacher can say something nice to a kid, like a throwaway comment. To the kid, oh wow, he likes me. He thinks you're good at math, or I think you're really terrific. The teacher could go home not even thinking that he made that comment, or sometimes, unfortunately, the opposite. A teacher can make a snide remark to a kid, and he thought it was a joke. He doesn't realize, and years later, the kid's affected by it. Thinking, I don't remember saying it, because to the one speaking, it's insignificant. To the recipient, it means a lot. We're the recipient, so to us, God said, "Let there be a world." It's a big deal, but to God, it's totally meaningless. So God chooses to allow us to give him happiness or to give him grief, not because we truly do. When we put on tefillin, we're not adding something to God. We do naver, we're not taking something away. So God chose for us to have a relationship with us, and He chose that these actions make him happy, not because they inherently affect Him. Nothing can affect Him. How can something meaningless affect something meaningful?
When you say keep recreating the world, what are you talking about? Earth?
No,
Milky
everything.
Way, everything.
Everything.
out there,
Entire
Everything.
universe.
The entire
universe, everything that's out there.
everything, because to us, we don't understand. We can't understand before time, before space, because we live inside the realm of time and space. So when the Torah says in the beginning God created, what Torah is really saying is God created the beginning and He created heaven and earth. Before there was nothing. We don't understand that concept. We don't understand the concept of forever. We don't understand the true concept of nothing. So
Or how far is it out there? Right? Like, that's mind-boggling.
right.
How far is it out there?
I one of the classes we said that Hashem, one of Hashem's name, which is written on the outside of mezuzah, is Shin Daled Yud. Right? On the outside of mezuzah, you see those letters? It says that in theory, the universe should expand infinitely, because the one creating it is an infinite being, God. But they say one of the reasons we say is that Hashem says Shaddai. Hashem said enough. Pause it. There is an end to the world. Where? We don't know. Yeah, and every time we find out something, and we've realized how I was reading an article that the congressman who flew on the Goodwill mission in the 50s or something. It's like 45 countries or 33 countries, whatever. And he says, you're flying over borders, there's no walls, there's no difference. What the astronaut said from up there, there are no different peoples, no different religions, there's no Republicans, there's just Earth. We're so, you ever see that video where they zoom out and they zoom out and they zoom out and they zoom out? How minuscule and infinitely unimportant we are, but we think, and even in our world, most people, what do they accomplish? That's why when you invest in Torah, when you invest in Judaism, and your kids, and people can say, oh, this, we're learning Torah because, think about it, we're learning something that a guy wrote 250 years ago, right? And you learn the Talmud, Rashi lived 1,000 years ago, but he's alive with us. That's something, we learn when Moshe's word, Moshe's alive with us. That's special. When you make a deposit in eternity, that's special. Another boat.
This sounds like
Chaim.